The delivery room was colder than I expected, but maybe it wasn't the air. Maybe it was the chill running through my heart. I clutched William's hand, but his fingers felt distant, limp. His eyes flicked down at his phone more than at me. A dull ache pressed in my chest, sharper than any contraction. "Focus," I told myself. "This is your moment. You fought for this. 4 years. 4 years of heartbreak, hormones, and hospitals, chasing a dream that felt like a cruel mirage. IVF was hell, a hell we endured together. Or so I thought." His promise echoed in my mind from that first tearful night when the test showed negative. "We'll keep trying," he had said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "We'll get there. Together." But as I lay here, battling through waves of pain, I couldn't shake the knot forming deep in my gut. Something was wrong. I'm Jessica, 30 years old, a woman who's fought for everything she's ever had. I built my career from the ground up, a marketing expert, a creator, someone who knew how to turn passion into profit. People always said I had a golden touch. If only they knew how much of that gold was forged from fire and failure. My mother gone too soon. My father lost to grief. Family became a concept more than a reality. But I rebuilt myself. I learned that love, when you find it, is something to guard fiercely, and I thought I had found it in William. My William. The man who stood beside me when I stumbled, the man who whispered promises of forever on a rainy night that tasted like hope. But lately, no, not now. Focus on the baby. The room blurred, machines beeping, nurses' voices blending into a distant hum. William's thumb tapped his screen. Again. "Who is it?" I gasped between breaths. His head jerked up. "Just work. Work. Always work." Yet the tension in his jaw, the flicker of guilt in his eyes, those weren't from deadlines. The hours passed in a haze of agony and anticipation until, at last, a wail pierced the air, raw and pure. My heart shattered and reformed all at once. Our baby. My baby. The warmth of her tiny body against my chest. Nothing else mattered. For one fleeting moment, the world was perfect, but reality always finds a way to creep back in. While the nurses bustled, I saw it. William turned away, his phone to his ear, voice low, urgent. "I can't talk now," he muttered, eyes darting to me. My breath hitched, the knot in my gut twisted tighter. He noticed and forced a smile, too quick, too thin. "It's nothing, Jess." Nothing. But when he stepped out to take a call, I knew. I wasn't always this suspicious. I was once the woman who believed in fairy tales until life rewrote the endings. Maybe that's why I built a career around understanding people, what they want, what they hide. Marketing taught me that every lie has a tell. And William was telling me something loud and clear. I spent that first night with my daughter, our daughter, in my arms and an ache in my chest that had nothing to do with childbirth. When he returned, hours later, his excuses were paper thin. My heart, though bruised, was sharp. So, when he finally fell asleep, I did what I never thought I'd do. I reached for his phone, locked, but his laptop, open. His messages blinked at me, a Pandora's box begging to be unleashed. Serena. The name hit me like ice water. Serena. A name from his past. Beautiful, dangerous, the woman who had once been a flicker of history. She should have stayed there, but here she was, in his phone, in his life. "I miss you," she had sent just hours ago. And his reply, God, his reply, soon. The air left my lungs. The man who had held my hand through every needle, every heartbreak, he was holding someone else in his promises. My hands trembled, but my mind sharpened. I copied everything: screenshots, messages, evidence. Not just of betrayal, of who he truly was. Because if life had taught me anything, it was this: trust is earned, but the truth you take for yourself. I closed the laptop, my heart pounding, but my resolve colder than steel. William wasn't the man I thought I had built my life with. But he was about to learn something about me, something no one ever fully understood. When I fight, I don't lose. I kissed my daughter's tiny forehead, her warmth grounding me. "You deserve a world without lies," I whispered, "and I'll make sure you have it." In that moment, my heart broke and hardened at once. I was Jessica, woman, mother, warrior, and no one would steal my life from me. The delivery room felt like both a battlefield and a sanctuary, a place where life would begin and something inside me would end. Pain ripped through me, waves crashing, pulling me under, but my heart felt another ache. William was there, his hand in mine, but his touch felt wrong, cold. His eyes, always my anchor, were elsewhere. His phone buzzed, and his fingers twitched, drawn to it like a magnet. "Focus," I gasped, but the look on his face wasn't worry for me. It was something else, something guilty. My body screamed, but my heart whispered, "What are you hiding, William?" I fought for air, for sanity, for control. The pain from my body blurred, but his distance was sharp. I saw his thumb flick the screen. Too quick, too secretive. My lips cracked with a question. "Who's texting you?" His head snapped up. "Just work," he said. Too fast. I knew that tone. I was a marketer. I read people for a living. His voice was polished, but his eyes stuttered. Another contraction crushed me, and I squeezed his hand harder, wishing I could squeeze the truth from him. He stayed, but the warmth was gone. I felt it. He was here, but his heart was somewhere else. No, with someone else. My body trembled, and so did something deep inside me, the fragile belief that we were still the team that had fought for this miracle together. The minutes twisted into hours, and finally our daughter arrived. Her cry, sharp and pure, filled the room and shattered me. My heart swelled, cracked, and healed all at once. She was perfect. Ours. But as I kissed her tiny forehead, a shadow loomed. William. His eyes weren't on us. They were on his phone again, his thumb moving in that furtive, familiar dance. "William," I started, but he cut me off with a forced smile. "You did amazing," he said, pocketing the phone too quickly, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. I felt cold, despite the heat of my labor-worn body. Minutes later, his phone buzzed again. He tensed. My heart, already raw, pounded with something new. Fear. "It's just work," he said again, but his voice cracked on the lie. My body screamed for rest, but my soul screamed louder. "Find the truth." Then he stepped outside to take the call. The room, once filled with joy, felt hollow. My eyes burned, and my exhaustion became fuel for something else: anger, suspicion, certainty. I reached for my own phone, my shaking fingers opening his cloud account. The backup synced automatically, photos, messages, his secrets laid bare. And there she was, Serena. My pulse stopped, then raced. The name hit me like ice and fire. I knew her, a ghost from his past. I opened the messages, and my breath shattered in my chest. "I miss you," she wrote minutes ago. And his reply, "Soon." The room spun, but my vision sharpened. My hands trembled over the screen as images filled my sight, texts that dripped with lust, plans whispered in stolen moments, and then photos. My stomach lurched. While I was fighting to give him a child, My fingers turned to ice around the phone, but inside, a furnace roared. The door opened and he stepped in, his expression darkening at the sight of my phone. "Jess? What?" His voice broke as he saw the screen. His lips parted, a lie ready to leap free, but I raised my hand, stopping him cold. "Don't," I said, my voice hoarse but sharp. "Don't insult me with another lie." The air between us crackled. His mask, the man I thought I knew, shattered, and I saw him, truly saw him. His eyes darted, calculating, deny, deflect, but I was faster. "While I was giving you everything," I hissed, my voice shaking with pain and power. "You were giving her—" My throat closed, but I forced the words through. "Everything else." His lips moved, but I heard nothing. The world had gone silent except for my heartbeat, pounding, roaring, deciding. He reached for me, but I pulled back. "No!" I snapped, the force in my voice surprising even me. "Don't touch me. You chose her. Now you face me." My daughter stirred in my arms, and I felt it. Clarity, cold and sharp as glass. I wasn't breaking. I was hardening. The woman who fought through every failed cycle, every heartbreak, she was still here, and she was stronger than his betrayal. I turned the screen toward him, the images glaring in the sterile room. "I saved everything," I said, and for the first time, he was the one who looked afraid. "The truth, William," I said, my voice steady and cold, "is mine now." And as he paled, stumbling over excuses, I felt it. The contraction was over. The pain had passed, and something new, something stronger, was being born. Me. The air felt electric, buzzing with tension, as I pushed open the cafe door. A bell chimed, a cheerful sound for such a dark moment. My heart pounded, and my palms burned where my nails dug in. There they were. William, Serena, together. His back to me, her predatory smile pointed at him. My stomach twisted at the sight, but my steps stayed steady. Not today. Today, I don't break. I felt the eyes of strangers on me, the low murmur of conversations dulling under the roar in my ears. Serena's fingers brushed his wrist. My chest burned. The man who had vowed forever to me, forever, lasted until someone shinier came along. "Having a nice chat?" I said, my voice cold, cutting through the air like a blade. William stiffened, his body locking as if he'd been turned to stone. Slowly, he turned. His face, shock, guilt, and something else, fear. Serena's eyes sparkled, her lips curling. "Jessica," she purred, her voice dripping with mockery. "Didn't expect to see you here." I stepped forward, my pulse thrumming. "Funny," I said. "I wasn't expecting to find my husband here either." William opened his mouth, probably to lie, but I raised a hand. "Don't," I snapped. "I'm not here for your excuses. I'm here for the truth." My fingers felt the cold, smooth surface of my phone. I was ready, and he wasn't. Serena leaned back lazily in her chair, her voice syrupy. "Jessica, honestly, don't make a scene. It's already over. You've lost." Her eyes glinted like a cat toying with a wounded bird, but I wasn't her prey. I was her reckoning. "Lost?" I echoed, my voice soft but sharp. "Sweetheart, I'm not the one who's losing." I tapped my phone, and the air filled with their voices, their betrayal. His murmured promises, her whispers, the ugliness they thought they had hidden. The cafe went silent, heads turned. Gasps fluttered around the room like falling leaves. I saw Serena's lips pressed tight, her skin draining of color. "You recorded us?" she hissed, her mask cracking. William, my husband, reached for me, his voice desperate. "Jess!" "Don't!" I snapped, my eyes blazing into his. "You chose her. Now live with it." His hand dropped, his face ashen with the weight of consequence. Serena's claws came out, her voice shrill. "This proves nothing," she spat. "You can't—" "Can't?" I interrupted, stepping closer, my voice low and lethal. "Darling, I already did." Her mask shattered then, eyes wide, her lips curling into a snarl. "You're pathetic," she sneered, "clinging to him like he wants you." My chest tightened, but my voice was cold steel. "Wanting and having aren't the same, Serena, and soon you'll have nothing." William's voice cracked through the tension. "Jess, please, I made a mistake." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "A mistake?" I said, my eyes burning into his. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. You—" My voice trembled, then sharpened. "Chose to destroy our family. Now face the cost." His mask of bravado broke entirely then. He sagged, his shoulders heavy with regret. But regret was currency too late to spend. The room watched, strangers, witnesses to the end of something that once was sacred. I felt their sympathy, their judgment. But I also felt something else. Power. Because for the first time, I wasn't the one broken. I stepped back, pocketing my phone. "Enjoy your coffee," I said flatly. "It's the last thing you'll share." I turned to leave, but Serena's voice, sharp with desperation, stopped me. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "This isn't over." I turned back, my eyes like ice. "No," I said, my voice cutting through the room. "It's just beginning. See you in court." I walked out then, my pulse steady, my heart ablaze. The cold wind outside hit my face, sharp and bracing, but I felt alive. Not broken, not shattered, unshackled, and ready to finish what they started. The air smelled like cold steel and burnt-out hope as I sat before my laptop, the blue light painting my face in shadows. My hands hovered above the keys, but my heart felt heavier than ever. Betrayal had a weight, a sharp, crushing thing, and it pressed down on me. But it wouldn't break me. William and Serena thought they had buried me under their lies, but they'd forgotten one thing. I didn't crumble. I forged. Richard's voice from our last call echoed in my ears. "Jessica, Virginia law's on our side. Adultery impacts spousal support, but we need concrete proof. Financial records, misuse of marital funds, and, if possible, something from Serena's business dealings." His tone had been clinical, but I heard the challenge beneath it. "Can you do this?" I had answered in my heart, "Watch me." First, the bank accounts. William's arrogance was my advantage. He hadn't changed the passwords we set years ago. My fingers flew across the keys, pulling up months of transactions. There it was. Jewelry stores, hotel charges, and wire transfers labeled consulting to a business named Sienna Holdings. My pulse quickened. I knew that name, Serena's LLC. So he wasn't just betraying me, he was funding her. I copied everything, timestamps, amounts, recipients, digital fingerprints of his sins. I paused only to breathe, my chest tight but my resolve tighter. Next, the cloud storage. It opened easily, syncing his phone backups, and there they were, texts between him and Serena. My eyes burned, but I didn't let the tears fall. "I miss you," she had written. "Can't wait for our trip." And William, the man who had sworn forever to me, replied, "Booked the suite, our secret." A growl built low in my throat. Our money, their pleasure, not anymore. My phone buzzed. A message from Richard. "If we can tie Serena's business to misused marital funds, we can hit her with third-party interference. A subpoena for her business records could expose everything." I texted back, "I found the transfers. Can we get the subpoena?" His reply was instant. "We'll file. But if you have anything that directly ties her to William's spending, it'll strengthen our motion." I swallowed, my body taut with adrenaline. There was one more thing I could do. I hesitated. Was this too far? No, they had already crossed every line. I accessed our home security logs. William had always kept the notifications, and there, video clips, him coming home late, and then a clip from his office, his laptop open, and on the screen, a video call. I clicked, the audio clear enough to drive a knife through me. Serena's voice. "You should move the next payment through the Sienna account. Less traceable." And William's smug reply. "Good thinking, babe. Can't have Jess sniffing around." My fist clenched, the bone-deep ache in my chest replaced by something hotter. Wrath. I saved the clip, my hands steady. "Richard," I said in a voice message, "check your email. Serena just implicated herself." The reply was swift. "Jessica, this is gold. With this, I can request a subpoena for her business accounts. If she's hiding anything, we'll find it. I'll also move to freeze assets tied to their transactions so they can't shift money before the settlement." His voice carried something rare. Admiration. "You've just turned this case into a checkmate." The next morning, Richard filed the motion. Serena received the subpoena within hours. I imagined her face, shock cracking that polished mask. I hoped it stung. But Serena wasn't one to lose gracefully. That night, my phone lit up. Blocked number. I answered. "Jessica," came her voice, syrupy and sharp. "You're making a mistake." "No, Serena," I said, my voice cold as marble. "You did." She hissed, the mask slipping. "Drop this. You'll never win." I let silence hang, then said, "I already have." And I ended the call, recording the exchange. Another piece of evidence, intimidation. By the next day, Richard confirmed the court's decision. Asset freeze granted, subpoena for Serena's records approved. William couldn't touch our shared funds. And Serena's business? About to be cracked open. The last blow came when Richard forwarded Serena's panicked attempt to halt the subpoena. Her lawyer cited privacy violations and irrelevance to the marriage. The judge's response was swift. Deny. Business transactions tied to marital funds are admissible. I exhaled, a tremor of something like relief passing through me. Not victory, not yet, but power reclaimed. I had taken their lies and turned them into a noose. That night, holding my daughter close, I whispered to her, "No one will ever steal what's ours, and no one will silence me." The courtroom felt colder than I expected, not from the air conditioning, but from the weight of judgment pressing down on every soul in the room. My heels clicked against the polished floor, the sound sharp, precise, like my resolve. I stood straighter, feeling the eyes on me. Reporters, strangers, and him, William. My husband, no, my opponent. He sat across from me, his suit crisp but his face pale. His eyes met mine briefly, then darted away. Coward. Beside him sat Serena, lips pressed tight, her fingers tapping, a nervous staccato against the table. Good. She should be nervous. The judge entered and the room rose, then settled into a taut silence. "Court is now in session," the clerk announced. My pulse thudded, but I felt steady. I wasn't here to beg. I was here to win. Richard stood first, his voice calm but cutting. "Your Honor, this case is about betrayal, deception, and the misuse of marital assets. The evidence we will present will show not only adultery, but financial misconduct that directly harmed my client." Serena's lawyer jumped in quickly. "Objection, Your Honor. Adultery should have no bearing on financial division." The judge raised a hand, his voice firm. "In Virginia, adultery is relevant." Objection overruled. "Continue, Mr. Richard." I felt the ripple in the room, a collective awareness that this wasn't going to be a simple proceeding. Richard's voice sharpened. "Let's start with the financials. Exhibit A, bank records showing William Parker transferred over $75,000 from a joint account to Serena's LLC, Sienna Holdings. Exhibit B, hotel receipts, jewelry purchases, and wire transfers, all marital assets spent on his affair. He placed the thick folder on the evidence table. We will also prove that Serena knowingly participated in these actions, making her liable for third-party interference. I watched William's jaw clench, his knuckles white against the table edge. Serena's eyes flashed. Anger, fear, or both. Then Richard turned to me. Mrs. Parker, please take the stand. I stood, every step toward the witness stand echoing with the weight of everything I had lost and everything I was about to reclaim. I swore my oath, my voice clear. Richard approached, his tone soft but firm. Jessica, please tell the court how you discovered the affair. I swallowed, then spoke, steady and true. It began in the delivery room. I felt him drifting, his eyes on his phone more than on me or our child. Later, I accessed our shared cloud account and found messages, photos, plans for trips, paid from our joint funds. My world collapsed in that moment, but I knew I had to fight. He nodded. And what did you do next? I gathered everything. I reviewed our finances and found transfers to Sienna Holdings. I also recorded a phone call with Serena, where she instructed William on how to hide the payments. It wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. Let's play that recording, Richard said. The room held its breath as Serena's voice filled the air. You should move the next payment through the Sienna account. Less traceable. William's reply followed. Good thinking, babe. Can't have Jess sniffing around. The reaction was immediate. A low murmur from the gallery, shock on the jurors' faces. Serena's mask slipped, her calm cracking into fury. That's taken out of context, she hissed. The judge's gavel slammed. Order! His eyes pinned Serena. Ms. Chase, you will not speak unless addressed. Richard's voice didn't waver. Mrs. Parker, how did you feel hearing your husband conspire against you with another woman? My throat felt tight, but my voice didn't break. I felt free from illusion, because in that moment I realized I wasn't losing him, I was losing a lie. Richard gave a slight nod and turned to the judge. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. This was not only adultery but malicious financial misconduct, a direct violation of Virginia law. We request full restitution of marital assets, punitive damages, and an award for emotional distress. Then it was their turn. Serena's lawyer approached, his smile thin and false. Mrs. Parker, isn't it true you accessed Mr. Parker's private accounts without permission? I met his gaze. No, we had joint accounts, and Virginia law permits accessing shared cloud storage. So, no, nothing I obtained was illegal, just inconvenient for your client. His smirk faded. You say this is about justice, but isn't it really about revenge? My lips pressed, then parted. You're wrong. Revenge is about destruction. What I want is restoration. Restoration of what was stolen from me. My trust, my security, my future. But most of all, my peace. His face darkened, but I saw it. The crack. He knew he was losing. The judge spoke. I have heard enough. This court finds that William Parker's actions constitute marital misconduct under Virginia law. Serena Chase's involvement in financial interference is substantiated by the evidence provided. He paused, then delivered the sentence. The court awards Jessica Parker full restitution of marital assets, sole custody of the child, and additional punitive damages. The motion for third-party interference is granted, and Serena Chase will be subject to further civil proceedings. The gavel struck. Victory. The room erupted. Whispers, flashes of cameras, but I heard only my breath, my heart, my freedom. William slumped, his face hollow. Serena stood rigid, her fury blazing but powerless. And me, I stood tall, unshaken. As I turned to leave, Serena's voice, sharp with venom, reached me. You'll regret this, Jessica. I paused, meeting her gaze one last time. No, Serena, I said, my voice calm, final. I regret ever giving you the chance to think you could win. Then I walked away, from them, from the wreckage, and into my future. The courtroom was silent, so silent that I could hear the pounding of my own heart. My fingers curled around the arm of my chair, nails pressing into the wood. I felt the weight of everything, every tear, every betrayal, every fight, balanced on the edge of the judge's next words. My breath was shallow, but my spine stayed straight. I had come too far to break now. William sat across from me, his once polished arrogance reduced to something brittle, something cracking. His tie was loose, his eyes sunken, his hands restless on the table. He looked like a man waiting for an executioner. Beside him, Serena tried to hold on to her usual air of superiority, but the cracks showed, her jaw tight, her lips pressed thin, and her manicured nails tapping out an anxious rhythm. Good. Let her feel it. Let her feel what it's like to wait for your world to collapse. The judge cleared his throat, and the room, already holding its breath, seemed to stop existing for a second. His eyes, cold and impartial, scanned the room before he spoke. This court has reviewed the evidence presented, he began, his voice steady, authoritative. The financial records, personal communications, and recordings have provided a clear and indisputable picture of the actions of the defendants, William Parker and Serena Chase. A cold knot twisted in my stomach as he continued, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. The evidence confirms that Mr. Parker engaged in an extramarital affair and misused marital assets to fund his relationship with Ms. Chase. Additionally, Ms. Chase's actions, including her participation in concealing financial transfers, constitute interference in the marital estate. The air felt electric, ready to snap. I could see Serena's mask slipping, the composure melting into panic. Her eyes flicked toward William, who sat frozen, his knuckles white against the table edge. The court finds, the judge continued, and my heart slammed, that the plaintiff, Jessica Parker, is entitled to full restitution of the misused marital assets. My breath caught. The total amount, including damages for financial misconduct, is awarded to the plaintiff. Furthermore, Ms. Chase is found liable for third-party interference and is ordered to pay additional compensatory damages to Mrs. Parker. A gasp rippled through the gallery, a sudden exhalation from the crowd. I felt it like a wave, but I kept my eyes fixed on the only faces that mattered, theirs. Serena's face twisted, disbelief flashing into fury. "This is ridiculous!" she hissed, half rising from her chair. "You can't!" The judge's gavel slammed down, his voice sharp and final. "Silence, Ms. Chase. This court has ruled. You are advised to conduct yourself accordingly." Serena's lips curled into something feral, but I saw it. The fracture. She was losing. No, she had lost. And the fall from her pedestal was shattering. I turned then, and my eyes met William's. He looked hollow. His lips parted, but no words came. For once, he was speechless. For once, he had nothing left to twist, no lie left to spin. And I felt it, a flicker of something cold and clean sweeping through me. "This is what you chose, William." The judge wasn't finished. "As for custody of the minor child, sole custody is awarded to Mrs. Parker. Mr. Parker will retain visitation rights as determined by this court, contingent upon compliance with financial obligations and behavioral conditions." That was the blow that hit him hardest. I saw it in the way his face cracked, his shoulders caving as the weight of consequence finally crushed him. His mouth opened, a plea forming, but no sound escaped. The gavel fell one last time. "This court is adjourned." For a moment, there was nothing but a roar in my ears, the sound of a storm finally breaking. The world came back in pieces, the shuffle of papers, the hum of whispers, the flash of cameras from the press pool. but I felt still, as if after years of drowning, I had finally reached the surface and could breathe. "Jessica," Richard's voice broke through, warm, steady. "It's done. You won." Won. The word felt unfamiliar. No, earned. I didn't win this. I fought for it. I turned, my eyes sweeping across the battlefield. Serena was already cornered by her lawyer, her face a mask of venom barely covering the ruin beneath. William sat alone, staring into nothing, a man who had gambled everything and lost it all. I walked past them, my heels striking the floor with the rhythm of finality. Serena's voice, sharp and desperate, lashed out. "You'll regret this, Jessica." I paused, turning only slightly, my voice cool and certain. "No, Serena," I said, meeting her eyes. "I regret ever believing you were worth my anger." Her face contorted with rage, but I was already gone. As I stepped outside, the sun hit my skin, a warmth I hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. Reporters swarmed, voices clamoring, but their questions were just noise. Then, softness. Small fingers curled into mine. I looked down and saw the only thing that mattered. My daughter, safe, innocent, and mine. I knelt, brushing a curl from her cheek, and whispered, "We're free now, baby, and no one will ever take that from us." The wind carried my words, and with them, the last ashes of my past. The sun felt warmer today. Or maybe it was me. I stood by the window of my new office, a mug of coffee cradled between my hands, and watched the world outside move. Cars passing, people rushing, life continuing. And here I was, alive. Not just breathing, living. The past felt distant, like an old scar, visible but no longer bleeding. The space around me hummed with soft chaos. Shelves lined with baby products, organic lotions, soft blankets, tiny shoes, everything chosen with care, with love. My name was on the door. Blossom Nest. Nurturing little beginnings. My business, my dream. Born from the ashes of my battle. I built this from the ground up, every piece of it a reflection of my journey. And people noticed. Mothers trusted me because I was one of them. I knew what it meant to fight, to love, to protect. "Mommy?" The sweetest voice broke through my thoughts. My heart lifted as I turned. "Hey, baby." I knelt just in time to catch my daughter as she rushed into my arms, her laughter like sunlight. She smelled of lavender from the store's samples, and her curls tickled my face as she hugged me tight. Behind her, my assistant Lily smiled, holding the little one's backpack. "She insisted on helping with the deliveries," Lily said with a chuckle. I kissed my daughter's forehead, the warmth of her skin grounding me. "Of course she did. She's my best partner, aren't you, sweetheart?" She giggled, nodding fiercely. "Best helper ever." That was the truth. She was my reason for everything. The reason I stood back up when the world tried to break me. The reason I built this life, not just survived it. The door chimed as a customer walked in, a woman, tired but hopeful, with a newborn swaddled in her arms. I saw myself in her, the exhaustion, the love, the fear of not doing enough. I approached with a soft smile. "Hi there," I said warmly. "Can I help you find something?" Her eyes, rimmed with sleepless nights, softened at my voice. I don't know what I need. My baby won't stop crying. I feel like I'm failing already." I placed a gentle hand on her arm. "You're not failing," I said softly but firmly. "You're learning, and that means you're already a great mom." Tears welled up in her eyes at the words I once so desperately needed to hear. I led her to the shelves, picking out a lavender baby balm I'd tested on my own daughter's fussy nights. "Try this," I said, "and try to breathe. You're not alone." Her hand trembled as she accepted it. "Thank you," she whispered. I smiled, feeling the familiar swell of purpose in my chest. "That's why I'm here." As she left, a deep peace settled over me. This was what victory felt like. Not a courtroom, not a verdict, but impact, connection, the chance to turn my scars into a map for someone else. A soft ping broke the silence, an email notification on my phone. I opened it absently, then froze. The subject line: Parker versus Chase, settlement finalized. My throat tightened, but I clicked. It was over. Serena's final appeal, denied. Her interference had cost her everything. And William? The last of his contested assets had been liquidated and transferred to my account. Financially, he had nothing left to fight me with. Legally, he had no ground to stand on. And emotionally, that bridge burned to ashes the day he chose someone else over his family. I felt nothing, no joy, no triumph, just closure. Because victory wasn't this email. It was this life. The one I built without him. The one I refused to let him steal. I pressed the phone against my chest and closed my eyes. "It's done," I whispered, to myself, to the universe. "We're free." The warm weight of tiny fingers touched mine. "Mommy?" Her voice was curious. "You okay?" I opened my eyes, and the world was brighter because she was in it. I smiled and knelt, cupping her cheek. "More than okay, baby. We're safe, we're happy, and we're exactly where we belong." Her little arms wrapped around my neck. "I love you, Mommy." My heart, whole and steady, whispered back, "I love you more, forever and always." Outside the window, the sun dipped lower, casting everything in gold. And for the first time in years, I stood not in shadow, but in light.